Super Mario World is a really special game to me, for being one of the first video games that I ever beat. Did I use Star Road? Yeah, but it's the first time that I ever seen the credits roll in a video game. And as a stupid 6-year-old, I didn't even comprehend that some video games had an end, because I couldn't beat them. Sure, you could take that as Super Mario World is so easy that a 6-year-old can beat it, and sure, I'd accept that, I guess. But there's just something about it that just works. The controls are so buttery smooth, the power-ups, though lacking, are fun and interesting. The music, the sprites, the dinosaurs, it's all so charming and keeps me coming back for more. I know that's a weird place to start with this video, but I mean it. Super Mario World is easily one of my favorite games in the Mario series, if not my absolute favorite of the 2D games. But here's the thing. Up until recently, I've had a really bad habit of letting nostalgia override what I think is good and what isn't. And over the past few years, I've grown a lot more critical with games and able to find glaring problems with them that I used to think were perfect. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's take an unbiased look at Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. Releasing in 1990 in Japan and later 1991 here in the States, Super Mario World was a launch title for the Super Nintendo. It saw the introduction of a ton of iconic mainstays that we sort of take for granted today, like the Charging Chucks, the Ghost Houses, Magic Koopas, to most importantly, Yoshi. Would you believe that Yoshi was actually planned to appear in the very first Mario Bros. But was scrapped due to system limitations? Just from the get-go, the game oozes charm and personality, with the now iconic theme song, the demo playing in the background, whose sounds almost blend perfectly into the music, and oh, such an iconic logo. Though Mario 3 had that iconic font for the Mario logo, it was Mario World that introduced the beautiful color pattern to it. We also get a bit of story this time around. It's not a lot, but the first thing that we see when starting the adventure is a text blurb to set the tone for the story as Mario leads into Yoshi's Island. No, not Yoshi's Island the game, the first area is called Yoshi's Island. Bowser kidnapped Princess Peach, Princess Toadstool, but on top of that, Bowser has imprisoned 7 Yoshis in each of his main castles, and every time you beat one, you get one of those eggs back. I say main castles, cause like Mario 3, there's fortresses littered around the overworld, though they're not nearly as common. And yeah, this overworld is massive. Unlike Mario 1 and 3, which had the game split into separate worlds, Super Mario World is one giant world. Suddenly the title's starting to make more sense. From Yoshi's Island, Donut Plains, Vanilla Dome, Chocolate Island, and wow, there's a lot of food themes here. Someone really liked Yoshi's cookie. Oh wait, that game hasn't come out yet. By today's standard, you might argue that this is a pretty standard Mario experience, but you could also argue that this is the game that set that standard. Right from the get-go, you have a fork in the path. You can stop by Yoshi's house, but that's nothing too special. Really, it's just to give Yoshi a home and to tell you that he left and is presumably dead in Miami. Going left won't take you too far, but it will take you to the Yellow Switch Palace, something that's kind of essential for the rest of the game. Maybe you can beat the game without it, but I'm too lazy to try. But every yellow transparent block you see through the world is replaced with this yellow exclamation mark block that's guaranteed to drop a mushroom, even if you already have one. It'll just move the item to your reserve, one of the coolest new features that Mario World introduces. If you already have an item and pick up another one, it'll put your old item up at the top here. You can summon it anytime you want by pressing select, or in my case minus. Yes, I'm playing this on the Switch, yes I have a SNES Mini, and no, I don't want to talk about it. It'll also drop it if you lose your current item, which is nice. It's sort of like a saving throw in a way. There's about 4 of these Switch Palaces / multicolored blocks that you'll encounter through the rest of the adventure, though only 2 of them drop power-ups. The rest simply create platforms that you couldn't use otherwise. As a kid, I always wanted to see what power-ups came out of these and thought maybe my game was bugged. Maybe there was something planned in development that was cut midway through, which I guess would make a bit of sense considering there's really only 2 power-ups in this game. Remember in Mario 3 where you had the Super Leaf, Tanuki suit, Frog suit, Hammer Brothers suit, and etc.? Well, that sucks because Mario World only has a flower and a feather. But it's a
cool feather. Have you ever wanted to fucking fly?
No, not like that. I mean
forever. Dive bomb your enemies. Make them never wish they were born.
Yes, it is true that there's not a lot of power-ups in this game, but the cape feather alone helps Mario World stand out. Fly indefinitely, skip levels if you want, use it as a screen nuke. It even works with the spin jump. Oh yeah, I guess I forgot to include the spin jump. Well, as you know, the Super Nintendo has more buttons. Well, let's see, gotta throw some new features in here somewhere. Zoom? Also, spin. The spin jump is awesome, and kind of a little broken. You can use it to destroy certain blocks, as well as bounce on surfaces that you otherwise shouldn't. Not all of them, sure, but this can make some parts of the game a bit of a joke. But at the same time, it's just so much fun to master. Well, I guess there is one other power-up in the game, the power balloon, which... You won't find the cape feather until after you finish the first castle, and up until that point, it's nothing but fire flowers and starmen, which do return, but come on, you already know what the starman does. Though the fire flower does turn enemies into coins, which is odd, but I guess it's neat. Working towards 1-up with every shot, I guess. Man, Mario World is incredibly generous with its 1-ups. At the end of each level, there's a goalpost that moves up and down, and the higher you hit it, the higher you get this little score up in your UI. And every time that score crosses 100, you get to play this rhythm cross bingo minigame, and whichever symbols you get to line up in a row gives you a 1-up. If you just jump at it at the right spot, you'll always get the same symbol. It's all in the timing. Everything up until the first castle is pretty standard, with the exception of Yoshi, who's able to consume nearly everything in the world except for football players. Hey, finally, I can relate. One of the first things you might notice is that every colored Koopa shell has a unique effect on Yoshi. Red spits out fire, green can be spat out as projectiles, and late in the game you'll be introduced to blue shells, which allow Yoshi to fly, and yellow shells, which make Yoshi completely useless. But if you get a Koopa to jump in said yellow shell, there's also these wings that appear rarely, but if you get a Yoshi to jump into them, it takes you to this bonus level, and if you can beat that bonus level, you can turn your green Yoshi into a blue Yoshi. And yeah, there are colored Yoshis. They're the most common in Star Road, which is near the end of the game, but you can get a blue Yoshi as early as this bridge stage after the third castle. Colored Yoshis will always have the same effect as the color that they represent. Blue will always fly if it has a Koopa shell in its mouth, red will always spit out fire, and yellow Yoshis will always be useless. And these abilities do stack too, meaning you can both fly and be useless. The donut planes also have the top secret by finding an alternate exit in this ghost house here. Ghost houses are the more puzzle-focused levels, often forcing you to scratch your brain a little bit, but they shouldn't give you too much of a problem, and I actually find these a lot easier than I did when I was 6 years old. Though I guess that's not saying much. I do love these floating green balls though. Like, what are these? Ghosts? Anomalies? Those portals from Half-Life?
Oh dear!
Yoshis also can't come into ghost houses, which I guess makes sense, because that would break some of the game's puzzles. I still want to take them though. I'm not a big fan of the vanilla dome, not because it's hard, because it's not, but because the level design does get kind of boring in these stages. Though we do get an introduction to the greatest thing to grace the Mario series, the Blarg. On top of having probably the best name of any enemy in video game history, they just look so fucking stupid. I love them. They're not a threat, they're just adorable. Alright, I guess we should talk about the bosses at this point, and though I do enjoy them, they're arguably one of the weakest parts of the game. As a kid, I never understood how I was supposed to beat the first Koopaling where you knock him into the lava. I couldn't comprehend a boss fight that wasn't about getting their hit points down. Probably a side effect of growing up exclusively with Mega Man. Personally, I would have swapped out the first boss with the second boss, which is as simple as it can be. Some of them do mix it up with a sort of whack-a-mole sort of style boss fight, but none of them are really a threat. Ludwig harkens back to his Mario 3 style boss fight, but he's still barely a threat. No, backflipping doesn't give you style points, I'm sorry. The best part of the boss fights is beating them. No, not because it's over, but because you get rewarded with these hilarious animations of Mario saving the Yoshi egg by demolishing a castle as if he's in Looney Tunes. The Forest of Illusion is where casual runs go to die. The stages aren't hard, but you need to find the alternate exit in order to progress through some of these stages, otherwise you'll just loop back around to the beginning half the time. You can go off the beaten path and find a fortress here, which has a pretty interesting boss in the form of Reznor. He's an optional mini-boss. Wait, Reznor? He's not hard, but I'd argue that he's more difficult than some of the Koopalings, if not all of them. What's the deal with the ghost ship? Is it supposed to be like the fortresses from Mario 3? That's kind of morbid. I both love and hate this falling segment here. I love it because it's super fun and just stupid, but I also hate it because it reminds me of Babby's first Mario Maker level, where they just throw everything in the kitchen sink at you. All that's missing is those funky rave parties. It's time for the one and only Valley of Bowser. Though it's not too flashy on the overworld and far less satanic than Mario 3's final world. It's your basic run-of-the-mill final levels. Thankfully not nearly as much of a slog as the tank levels from Mario 3, though I do admit that these levels do lack a bit of identity. You could put these levels anywhere else in the map, and they wouldn't really scream final level to you. Though I'd say that these levels are pretty finely tuned for their difficulty. Some of these levels really test to make sure you've got the hang of Mario's jump, movement, and mid-air control. It honestly lets me move in ways that I couldn't even dream of in some of the previous games. I do wish that some of these Valley of Bowser levels were a bit more difficult though. Like right before this you have the Chocolate Mountain, and though I think that these are some of the most boring levels in the game, they're probably on par with the difficulty here. Like yeah, it's challenging, but that's really it. Though I could argue that this is my fault. Growing up, I spent a lot of time with the Mario World modding scene. I would play ROM hacks, especially Kaizo. I got the hang of that stuff. I don't know how I beat it with a keyboard. I would mess around with Lunar Magic and build a ton of my own levels. And even today you have Mario Maker, which has levels way harder than anything in this game. So maybe those things kind of trained me and I'm just not too fazed by this difficulty anymore. Though not too difficult, Bowser's Castle is nearly infinitely replayable. Both halves of the fortress are separated into 4 doors that each take you on a different path with their own gimmick. I personally like to take the route with the little spark dudes and then the room with all the football players. Bowser himself finally shows up in a fairly unique boss fight. He floats around in his clown copter, which to this day still confuses me, like why do you have this my dude, and can only be beaten by throwing his own Mecha Koopas back at him. Is it gimmicky? Yeah. Is it memorable? Yes. How can you not have a memorable boss fight when he uses weaponized bowling balls? After throwing a temper tantrum, the King Koopa is defeated once again and Toadstool is saved and the golden Yoshi eggs are returned home in one of the most uplifting and happiest ending themes in video game history. I admit the Super Nintendo isn't always perfect for music, but when Nintendo's behind the wheel, oh man does it sound great. Though it is one of those games, yeah, you know the one. The one where after the ending sequence it just locks the game and you have to restart the console. If this was the original Mario Brothers without a post-game or anything, this would be fine, but believe it or not, Mario World actually does have a post-game. Remember the Star Road I mentioned earlier? Every level does require you to find the alternate exit, but each of these Star Road points will lead you to another spot in the overworld. It's kind of like a fast travel hub. A lot of these levels really want you to have found all the Switch Palaces, but you can cheese it with the right combination of Yoshi and Shell if you really want. I didn't even find the red and blue Switch Palace, but I was still able to beat this. Well, completing every level in it unlocks the Special Zone. Well, actually, I think you just have to beat this level here. It doesn't matter. But some of these stages in the Special Zone were some of the hardest ones in the game and were easily my favorite in my run. I think I've been playing a bit too much Mario Maker, but after beating these levels again, I can say for sure that I fucking hate the charging trucks that throw baseballs. What the fuck? You're a football player. Why are you throwing baseballs? But beating the Special World unlocks you with the title of Super Player and reworking the overworld into an autumn theme, which is cool and all, but oh brother, what have they done to you?
Destroy the child.
I have a gut feeling that this was supposed to be like a Halloween mode. I mean, the jumping piranhas are literally jack-o'-lanterns. I'm not sure, but this is unsettling. Okay, so we've been through the game. I didn't beat all 96 levels, but I did make it through all the way to Bowser. So what do I think from an unbiased perspective? It's still pretty good. I did notice some glaring issues this time around, mostly being that especially after Mario 3, I think Mario World is lacking in some of the unique worlds and settings of the previous game. Mario 3 had the giant world, a water world, a sky world, etc. While Mario World only has like 4 or 5 distinct settings, with the game switching up the color palette a bit. I do really love the enemy variety though. There's so many new enemies in this game that help the game feel fresh all the way through to the end. Dry bone variants, bullet bill variants, sumo Koopas, these little spark things. And oh man, the music is just so great, with some of the most iconic music in all of video games. It's fantastic even outside of the nostalgia. It's not perfect, it's far from perfect actually, especially with the lackluster boss fights, but with an incredibly fun final boss, and if it's too easy for you, there's the Star Road and Special World to really put your reflexes to the test. Though, don't worry too much about grinding for 1-ups, cause for some reason your lives reset back to 5 if the console is turned off. I'm not a big fan of that. Super Mario World sold crazy well to near universal praise, and I think it's deserved, with magazines like Nintendo Life calling it a graphical holy grail. I'd argue the passion and community for this game was kept alive by the modding scene, thanks to tools like Lunar Magic and the huge Mario World modding community, with Kaizo almost single-handedly keeping the game relevant for the coming decade. It's been re-released on any Nintendo system with a Super Nintendo-style virtual console, from the Wii, the Wii U, the new 3DS, the SNES Mini, the Switch Online service, so if you have any of those consoles, minus the Wii, because that shop is dead, I highly recommend checking out this adventure if you have even a remote interest in it. Again, this is important to me because this is the first video game that I ever properly beat growing up, and it helped expose me to the rest of the world of video games and made me truly appreciate the medium like I do today. So remember kids, don't eat your eggs, commit unwarranted demolition, and always spin jump over your problems. Yes, even if that problem is a giant saw blade. Alright, here I go.